PS3 almost killed PlayStation, and Xdefiant, well, no, that didn't kill Call of Duty, and Indiana Jones might just kill your PC. Welcome back to 128 Gaming News. This is your quick bit of gaming news where we catch up on the world of gaming this week in this short news video. And no, this isn't short or news-like. I try to put in as many stories as possible in here so you can catch up in a leisurely place. So there's chapters below. If you want to skip ahead to the story that you're interested in the most, maybe you've got the patience of a snail and you want to watch all of it, then you're more than welcome. And aren't you lovely for being here all the time? And before we crack on to the first video, the first story, whatever it's called, the first story, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can support me in my mad ramblings. But let's jump into that first story, and that is that the PS3 almost killed PlayStation. In a recent interview with Eurogamer, PlayStation exec Sean Layden talked about the disastrous launch of the PlayStation 3 and how PlayStation themselves were lucky to escape surviving that disastrous launch of that console. For those of you that are too young to remember, or maybe you just weren't paying attention at the time, the PlayStation 3 launched in 2006 and it was an absolute calamity of a launch. Firstly, there was that huge price tag that it had, which is almost $800 by today's pricing, and there was this huge lack of titles at launch and just a general kind of misdirection from PlayStation for it, and they were absolutely slammed for it at the time, and sales suffered as a consequence. Sean Layden himself said, we had the PS1 and the PS2, which were massively successful, and then we were building a supercomputer with a PS3. We're going to put it on Linux, and we're going to do all these crazy sort of things. We flew too close to the sun with it, really, and we were kind of lucky and happy to survive that experience, and it did teach us a lot. What's interesting is that kind of lack of focus that they had with the PS3 really informed them for their future developments. And Layden himself talks about how this ensured that future PlayStations and the developments from PlayStation focused on gaming first, that they must build the absolute best gaming computers for your lounges, for the home console system, and not worry about anything else. He even kind of pointed at Xbox and their kind of misdirection on building multimedia machines rather than game-focused consoles, and that's where he thinks that PlayStation then went on to be so successful with the PS4 and obviously now into the PS5. It's crazy to think of now that PlayStation is so successful, but the PS3 was, by their standards, relatively underwhelming, only just outselling the Xbox of that generation and also underselling the Nintendo Wii of the same era by a good 20-odd million units, and is still the least selling PlayStation console of all of them, apart from the PS5, which obviously we're only halfway through. Okay, drumroll please. Yes, the award for the most underwhelming and repetitive story ever goes to more Switch 2 leaks. Ta-da!
Yes!
We've had more leaks about the Switch 2, and it's not really leaks about Switch 2, it is accessories that are reportedly to do with the Switch 2 being leaked onto Alibaba and across some Chinese forums. Now, I will say this story needs a massive a dumpster load of salt attached to it, because I don't really buy much into it at all, but it's being covered everywhere, so I thought I would fill you guys in so you can keep up to date. Essentially, what we've seen is a bunch of questionable images for Switch 2 accessories that have been shared on Chinese retailer Alibaba. Now, what we do see is a screen protector with a kind of anonymous labeling next to it, so just a screen protector next to a Switch screen protector, and a carry case that someone's printed Nintendo Switch 2 onto it. It feels grasping at straws, if anything at all. And at this point, we're all obviously hyped about the Switch 2 coming, but it feels like any kind of rumours that anyone's just going to jump on it because it's so hype-filled. I can't imagine for a second that Nintendo, one of the most secretive companies in gaming, would allow some random third-party cheap accessories manufacturer access to any of the specs about the best kept secret in gaming for this generation before its release. It just seems so unlikely that they would be giving out to screen protector manufacturers the exact dimensions of the Switch 2 screen. That in itself feels far-fetched. What it does feel like that if you were, say, a retailer of screen manufacturers and you wanted loads of people to look at your products and your shop, that you could perhaps just slap Switch 2 on it, and then loads of people are going to go and look at your shop on Alibaba. Maybe I'm being cynical, but maybe it's a really good marketing ploy. It all feels far-fetched for me, but, honestly, I really genuinely feel like there's nothing in it. But, I'm also more than willing to jump on board the hype train to destination unrealistic expectations. Boop, boop, off we go to the Switch 2. And whilst we're on that train to unrealistic expectations, let's talk about Ubisoft and their unrealistic expectations for killing Call of Duty. Yes, of course, I'm talking about Xdefiant being killed and not being successful at killing Call of Duty. Ubisoft have announced that the Call of Duty killer, Xdefiant, is being sunset. Now, normally I would wade right in and find all the humour and jokes I can and point fun at Ubisoft because it's Ubisoft and they do nothing but make terrible smells. Yes, that's right. But I actually want to preface this slightly with a bit of sensibility because it does involve people losing their jobs and that's harsh as hell. And also, Xdefiant itself wasn't a terrible game, and for those people that are actually fans of it, they truly loved that game and sunk hundreds of hours into it. There was a good game there. It's just in a horribly saturated marketplace of live service, free-to-play, arena, extraction, battle royale shooters. It's a horrible marketplace to try and exist in, and it seems like Xdefiant has failed. Now, Ubisoft put out an announcement talking about this specifically, that the sunsetting process will start immediately and will run through until June next year. They will issue refunds for anyone who's made cosmetic purchases or has bought the season pass or the early adopters pass, whatever they call it in that game. They will be issuing refunds over that period and they won't allow people to buy new things between now and then. So no one's going to be losing any money. It's just that everyone's that's invested into it is going to be losing their game, and that does seem quite sad. And whilst we're on a kind of slightly downward part of that story, it is also announced that Ubisoft are going to be closing the San Francisco and the Osaka studios, and they're going to be downsizing Sydney as well as part of this. Around, I think it's 300 jobs in total are going to be lost as a consequence of them sunsetting Xdefiant. That's pretty dark, and it comes off the back of so many studios closing down and so many jobs being cut out of the game industry. It is a pretty dark time all round. But I guess the real part of this story for me is it kind of indicative of us as players reflecting as to actually what we want from these big companies. We don't want more arena shooters. We don't want more free-to-play extraction, battle royales. We don't want more Concords, although that is quite a funny story. So maybe one or two more Concords from Sony or Ubisoft. I think what we can all accept is that we do want more great games. We want more great single-player narratives. We want more co-op games. Multiplayer games are cool. We just don't want that to be the only thing that we play and that we have access to. And how much time do people honestly have as well? The people that are into those free-to-play or the online kind of live service games, Call of Duty already exists. There's Fortnite if you're a child as well. The PUBG, there's some few real big hitters that exist that are out there. How many more do we need, and how much space is there in the market for it? Well, quite clearly, not enough space even for Ubisoft to get into it with Xdefiant. Anyway, it's over. It's another Ubisoft story, so at least there's some kind of comedy in there for us all. And from Ubisoft making a hot mess, let's talk about the Indiana Jones game making a hot melted mess of your PC. Yeah, it's going to make your PC chug. The minimum and required and recommended specs release for PC version of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has been released, and yeah, it's surprising. Actually, it's going to be pretty terrifying for most average gamers out there that you're going to melt your PC because the specs needed for this are huge. So I'll jump straight into some of the numbers before my PC has a heart attack just hearing them and shuts down itself. I'm not going to go into all of it. I'm not Digital Foundry, as you may have guessed. I'm not clever enough to be Digital Foundry. I'm just going to roughly gloss over the kind of headline parts of it. The minimum requirement to run ray tracing on this game, the minimum requirement, is an RTX 4070, and that's with DLSS and frame gen on, giving you an output of 1080 at 60. Recommended specs for ray tracing will see you needing an RTX 4080. Again, that'll be running DLSS and frame gen, giving you an output of 1440 at 60 FPS. Now, if we're turning ray tracing off, which I recommend you do, because, I mean, who's got a 4080 at hand just to play Indiana Jones? We're going to need recommended specs of an RTX 3080 Ti, or in the other world, the RX 7700 XT, to achieve a native 1440 at 60 FPS, and that's the target frame rate, not a locked frame rate. To me, that sounds absolutely insane. Now, I will admit, I'm from the console land, so PC specs don't mean a huge amount to me, but I've got a light handle on that is pretty ridiculous. And from the preview material we've seen of the game, the gameplay previews, it shocks me that we need that much. It didn't look like it was going to be that intensive of a game. It didn't have the seeming intensity that Cyberpunk had when that was coming out and was melting everyone's graphics cards. So I'm surprised. I'm so surprised and so out of my depth for this. I turned to resident 128KB PC nerd Andy to see what he said, and he did say this. So you need a £500 GPU to run a game 720p or lower to hit 1080-60 on low settings. This is ridiculously shit nowadays. It's 2024. What the actual are they doing? Now, I'm not sure if any of that quote from Andy is actually usable, but what we can gather from it is that he was a little shocked. Maybe you're more than a little shocked. He seems a little kind of irate. What it does beg the question of, the big kind of elephant in the room with this is, how the hell is the Xbox going to run this game? If they're the kind of recommended and minimum settings needed for your PC to run it, how is the Xbox going to cope with this? And for that matter, I was thinking about the Series X when I was talking to Andy about this, but it's just kind of popped into my head. What about the Series S? This game is coming out on the Series S as well at the same time. How have they tackled that? I mean, firstly, it'll be a technical wonder to see how they have done it. Have they just made a complete potato version of the game to run on the Series S? Is it like back in the Game Boy days when they would release like a really different version of the game that was really watered down and a bit crap? Maybe they've done that, or maybe they've got some technical wizardry somehow and managed to get some epic upscaling performance out of the Series S, because I can't get my head around how that's possible. But I can't get my head around how any of these specs are kind of needed for this game. It kind of baffles me, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys could tell me down in the comments if I am. But from all the preview material, it just didn't look like it's going to need such a demanding rig and able to run it with ray tracing. That just seems absolutely amazing. But do let me know down in the comments down below what you think. And if you are going to jump into the Indiana Jones game when it releases, I'll say it right in a minute. I definitely am day one. I know Andy is as well, because we want to do a bit of a side-by-side comparison of like what's it like to run on PC versus Xbox, and maybe do some content about that, maybe over on the podcast channel. And once you're down there digging around in the comments down below, make sure you do like the video, subscribe to the channel, because, you know, I need your love. We do have channel memberships open as well. Hurrah! Yes, so you can help support what we do here at 128KB and maybe join us in our channel members Discord as well. I was trying to think what it was called. But before you go anywhere else as well, maybe watch another video from us here. Maybe this one, the podcast, where me and Andy talk about all things gaming in a slow, calm style. Yes, it's quite nice. So until next time, I'll see you next time.
It's the news.